Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be bringing you along with me for another day in my kitchen of preparing meals for my family and just baking some muffins and some bread and just all the fun kitchen things. Something I've been trying to be more intentional with doing is using up everything that we have, and this is always so hard. Last year, it was around this time of the year, I believe, I did a little bit of a pantry shelf kind of cooking challenge where I challenged myself to just use what we had for that whole month, apart from, you know, the fresh things and the dairy products and things like that. And that's what I'm kind of trying to do right now. So for breakfast, I ended up using our last little bit of bread from our last batch of bread. So instead of just sending that out the door to our backyard chickens, I ended up making French toast with it, and it was really, really good. And then this morning, as you saw in the crock pot, I laid out some beef short ribs and started simmering those so that way they can simmer all day. Beef short ribs for us, they're really hard for the kids to eat, so we never actually just eat the meat off of the bone. However, I will simmer them all day and make the most delicious, rich broth, and then I'll can the broth at the end of the day or put it in jars. That way the following couple of days or so we can make a stew. So I'll keep the broth, but then I'll take the meat off of the bones, and then I'll show you later in the video what we're doing with the meat and what tonight's dinner is. So something that I have mentioned a couple of times on my channel, but I'll go ahead and mention again, and that is just really being thankful for all the modern conveniences that we as mamas do have, whether that be a crock pot for starting dinner, so then dinner's halfway done at least, and then you have a bread machine so we can knead our dough, let that do that for us, a mixer so we can get that mixed up and tossed in the oven. And so it's just really given me the ability to do all of the things kind of at the same time, where before I might just spend a day focusing on one or two things instead of doing all of the food prep. So I'm just really thankful for those modern conveniences, and I'm trying to get better at using them more frequently when it comes to doing all that. When this day was filmed, this is actually the inauguration, and this was such a fun afternoon. We ended up watching almost the full 2 hours of it, I believe. But it was so fun to introduce the kids to all the different figures and the people and to explain the process, because they're now at an age where they'll remember it and that they know the process because we've been reading about it in the Tuttle Twins. So while the inauguration was kind of getting off to a head start, that's when I started the applesauce muffins. And while the inauguration was on, I was kind of going back and forth between our homeschool, starting the muffins, getting them going. The recipe that I'm making here, I want to go ahead and talk about this since I showed the apple cider vinegar. These are just really simple applesauce muffins. I make them all the time, so you guys are probably familiar with them if you guys have been around on my channel. But they don't really require any butter or eggs. The main wet ingredient is applesauce, and they are the most delicious and just moist muffins. And my little ones love them so much. I end up putting a lot of extra cinnamon in them than the recipe calls for. I'll link it down below. And they just taste like a kind of almost like a fluffy apple pie almost, but they're really, really good. At this point in the day, I went ahead and tossed our applesauce muffins in the oven, at least the first batch, and then made a cup of coffee, and then we went back and did some more of our homeschool morning.
Agenda with the American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before. To restore confidence, to restore better health, and happen again. Leadership, order, our cities.
There, all right.
recently.
What are you talking about? Where's that from?
I can get
So at this point in the day, I had already thrown in the first batch of bread ingredients, and it had kneaded, and by the time I ended up finishing putting the baby into her nap, I got that out and got it ready for its first rise. I love this bread recipe. It's one of my all-time favorites. I will definitely link it down below if you guys want to check it out. I've used it for years, and it's one of those recipes that is really just foolproof. And since I am not the greatest baker, I need a recipe that's always going to work. And it's something that sometimes my measurements aren't going to be perfectly precise, and that's why I love it, because I can kind of just dump it in and move on with the day. But as you're seeing, I'm doing a second batch. So the first batch I'm probably going to end up turning into bread loaves, and the second batch will be our rolls that we'll end up using for our sandwiches for tonight's dinner.
Well, now the cabinet can't shut, really. Okay. What is it? I'm testing really. Yeah. All right. You want to listen to your treasure test? Yeah. Mom, I want to do the exercise.
Yes, but we're going to turn on this side today. We're going to make some plans. Okay. Here, let me put the stars in, and then I want you to take the crayon. Okay. So at this point in my day, it started snowing again, which honestly made the whole day even more fun and more beautiful. So my two older ones bundled up and went outside to do some more sledding. And while they were out there, I made up a batch of one of my all-time favorite hot chocolate recipes. This is a recipe I grew up on with my grandmother. It's been in our family for years and years and years, and I love making it for my little ones. I have tweaked it a little bit from the original recipe. I believe the original recipe called for like a creamer, almost like a coffee creamer type base. Instead of that, I've used, and what I found works just as well, is I get a dehydrated goat milk powder. So it's a lot healthier than the coffee creamer powder. So for my milk base, I'll use a goat milk powder, or you can do a whole milk powder, whichever you prefer. And then one of my favorite things to do is I use a fermented cocoa powder. It's really good for you, and because it is fermented, it's gut healthy, and I don't feel bad if my kids want to drink it a lot. So the third ingredient is of course, powdered sugar, and you can adjust that based on the sweetness level that you like. But I do like that's really customizable, and it's just really so delicious. So since I was baking all the things already and already kind of in a baking mood, I decided to go ahead and make some vanilla cupcakes. This is one of my all-time favorite recipes. It does require a lot of time mixing, and this is probably why I haven't tried too many complicated recipes before, just because I hadn't really had a mixer or anything like that. My husband ended up finding a KitchenAid mixer at a local thrift store. That's where this came from. So I was really happy to try some more complicated recipes that required more time to just mix between things, mixing the eggs and the sugar together, or the butter and vice versa. And so having this mixer has been so much fun, because I've been able to try more complicated recipes. Whereas before, if it said to mix something for 8 minutes, I would have been like, maybe not. Find something more simple. Another thing that I do that this recipe did not call for, but I love doing, is we had a ton of blackberries on our property last summer. So we were able to freeze just bags and bags and bags of them, which is something that we are so thankful for. And it's also something that I wanted to be intentional with using up, just to make sure they didn't go to waste, because they were not double bagged or anything. We were in a hurry, you just kind of put them in the freezer. What I love doing with the black raspberries is putting them in an actual cake base, and it just makes them extra moist, and the kids love them. They just love anything. as you saw, I ended up shredding those beef ribs and then putting some barbecue sauce just to have that classic pulled beef sandwich. And then the last thing that we used up that day that I was trying to use up was a random bag of carrots. So it was a very simple dinner, but it was also just really, really delicious and a perfect meal for those chilly midwinter evenings. I do want to thank you guys for being here and for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And until my next video, you guys have a wonderful day, whatever you're doing, and God bless. Bye, guys.